Good morning from Catalina Island in California. Today we are going to be taking another flight in the Cessna 414. It's definitely one of my favorite aircraft at the moment. Typically I fly the GNS530, which coming out at some point soon I'm going to have a more in-depth look at the GNS530, but today we are going to focus on the GNS530 version. The reason why is there's a group, or it might even be just a single person, PMS50, who make an amazing mod for the GNS530. And I didn't realize how much functionality they actually added into it. And so I wanted to kind of do a quick flight, go over some of the cool things they added to it, and also kind of go through some checklist type stuff for this aircraft. There's another guy who makes amazing, he does more than just these checklists, but he has a lot of really useful checklists for Flight Simulator, and I'll put a link down below. His name is JayDee. So we're going to kind of do a high level overview of his checklist as we're getting things fired up and inputted into the aircraft. So let's go ahead and jump on into the cockpit. All right, so here we are. We've got just enough light to kind of see what we're doing here. So going for our before starting engines checklist, we're just going to make sure that doors are latched, seats and everything are all secure, which is fine. Parking brake is set. Need to come down here and turn on our fuel to the main tanks. Landing gear switch is down. We will need our prop sync off. Mixture needs to come full forward, and same with our prop, so we can pop those all the way up. Then throttle we need to crack open about an inch. There we can get our battery on and our alternators on as well. Next would be our nav light, so let's go ahead and pop on our nav light and test our annunciator panel. All good there. Something that's not on the checklist that I guess you could put underneath the same sort of general check is that check fuel quantity, but we also have this awesome fuel computer here that you need to set before really starting up the engine, so that way all of the sort of remaining burning and all that sort of stuff is accurate for the flight. So we are good there. So let's go ahead and get things fired up. So we just want to make sure our props are clear. They are. Our alternators are on. Magnetos we need to turn on, so we can come up here, pop all of those on. Our primer switch is as required, but we'll go ahead and pretend that we need it. It's actually superficial, doesn't really do anything. Just do it for a couple of seconds, and then you can go ahead and fire up. That's fired up. We're looking to get our RPMs around. See, we got a little bit too much throttle going on here, so let's back that off. Cracked open the throttle a little too far. We need 800 to 1,000 RPM, so right about there. Then we want to check and make sure that we do have oil pressure, which we do. From that point, we can go ahead and switch on our fuel pump in the low setting, and we can now repeat for the right engine. So we can come over and hold the primer, and we can go ahead and hold down start, and just make sure everything's looking good there. It should start coming up. We're good. Alternators are on. Let's get some lighting on in here. And from here we can go ahead and get our avionics on and get to the good stuff. So to get the Garmin all set up, first thing is saying that message, we don't have a flight plan in. Now, one of the cool features that have been added to this from the mod is that you can actually have saved flight plans in by rotating over one page. You can see I have a couple saved in here. You save those actually in the file folders inside the mod. They have very clear directions on the download page on how to do this. But we're going from Catalina to Carlsbad, so there's that one there, and you can just go through and hit enter, load flight plan. Takes a second, and then it'll bring it over. Now, I saved this with an approach, and so it's missing one waypoint, which is my transition waypoint onto the ILS. So I want to add that in, which is very simple to do. Is you're just going to right click on there. You want to go down to the waypoint. You want it to add it before. So we want it before the destination airport there. So there you're just going to rotate over, and we need to put in that we want to go to the Oceanside VOR. So let's go and rotate on through O and C and N. And there's Oceanside. So we can go ahead and enter that in, add yes. So we're good as far as our flight plan goes. We'll add that approach as we get in a little bit closer. Now, something else that's really cool that they've added is that if you come over to the channel spacing or comm setup screen, which I always have it on 25 kilohertz, which makes tuning comms a lot easier. But if you now rotate over page, you can see that we have MEDAR data. Again, there's good directions on the download page on how to get this activated, because you have to do a couple of steps to make this show up. But it's great because right now it's showing us for Carlsbad, but if we went back to our flight plan and we just clicked on the cursor, rotated up to Catalina, so we load up the waypoint, and then if we scroll over to that same comm page, we can now see that we have Catalina. It also decodes the MEDAR data for you, so it's very easy to see, listed out that way. So we can go ahead and actually set our altimeter, which is at 3003. So there we go, altimeter is set. So we have our flight plan in. We've checked the weather. Wind is currently 040 at 4 knots, which is great because this is a runway for 040. So we're going to have a nice headwind to take off. If we come back over to one other thing I'm going to show you is on the nav screen. If you come over to the second nav page, you can hit enter and we get a radar now. So I'm hoping that the update soon will get this one activated, because that's kind of what that's supposed to be. But we do have the ability in here. You can hit enter again to have vertical, zoom in and zoom out, hit the clear button, and it clears out the legend if you don't want that on the screen. So very cool as well. So those are some sort of like additions to everything, which I think is just awesome. It also has a lot better engagement with flight planning, direct twos, approaches, all that sort of stuff is enhanced to be a little bit more real world. So we're going to go ahead and get our autopilot set up. So first thing we need to do is get our CDI switched over to GPS, because we are flying a GPS route. And then we're going to turn on our flight director. We're going to turn on our heading mode and get our heading bug set to 040. So right around there. We're going to go up to 7,000 feet. So there, we need to arm that. Now, something that is pretty cool with this, where in the GNS530 you have a much more modern autopilot, where this one you can tell is very basic. Well, I would say basic, but very sort of primitive in its functionality here. The way it works is down here you have your autopilot on, yaw dampener, and your pitch. We can go ahead and turn on the yaw dampener now, because once we get sort of up into the air, by the time we're turning on autopilot, we'll be fine to have the yaw dampener on. Now, there's also this button on your yoke, which is your sort of like pitch synchronized button. So as we climb out and we get our pitch set for really, our initial climb, which we want to be around 120 knots, between 120 and 140 knots, somewhere in that range. So we're gonna sort of get our climb out of around 100 knots, obviously have our gear up, and then we're gonna sort of pitch our nose down a little bit to bring up that speed, and then we can hit this pitch sync button and then turn on autopilot, which will then hold our pitch at that level, which is nice because you don't have to deal with that nose dipping while you turn it on, because it's going to try and level out, and it just gets messy. So this is the way to get that sort of set up and synchronized. So that being said, we have our engines all fired up. We can go ahead and look at our before taxi, which is going to be very basic here. Avionics is on. We do have everything planned and good to go. Transponder, we do need to come over here though and turn that on and into standby. We're just doing, so on, interesting. I don't know why it turns off with standby turned on. So alt standby. Huh. I haven't seen that before actually. Usually it works. Well, we'll just leave it on altitude mode. Usually you can just, well, it's on, hit that and it's still fine. But anyways, moving on. Transponder is set, altimeter set, autopilot is pre-selected and set. Cabin temperature, let's go ahead and check that, because I bet you it's crazy hot in here right now, which it is. So we can come down here, we're gonna pop on our AC high blower and get that cranked over, and we'll start to see that temperature come down. We don't have any passengers on board today. We're just doing a quick flight solo. And then we can go ahead and make sure our flight controls are free and clear. That all feels good. Give the rudder pedals a little wiggle. And then we can go ahead and announce our taxi. So we're gonna this is a Unicom airport, so we're gonna make sure that we have runway 4 selected, which we are good there, and we're just going to announce our taxi.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Cessna.
We can now turn on our taxi light.
To runway 4.
And we're not going to do an engine run up, we're just going to get on in the air. Alright, so quickly going to go through our before takeoff checklist. We need to check fuel quantity, we are good. Our fuel selectors are on main, our emergency cross-feed shutoff valve, which is here, is pushed in. Our alternate air controls are closed. Cowl flaps we have open. Trim tab set for takeoff. They always have a little high here, so I like to do a little nose up. Wing flaps, we don't need them here today, so those are up. Prop sync is off. Avionics and GPS is all set. Altimeter is set. Autopilot is pre-configured. Transponder, we can go ahead. Well, we already actually have it on altitude mode because that was being weird with us. We're not pressurizing the cabin, but if we were, your settings are down here. Cabin vent controls. Let's see if we've cooled down the cabin here. Yep, we're in the green now, so that's nice. Then our annunciator power, we'll go ahead and check that again. That is all fine. Auxiliary fuel pumps are on low. Flight controls are free and clear, and we can also turn on any anti-ice now. So we just want to make sure that that pitot heat there is turned on, and we are good to go. From there, we can go ahead and announce that we are about to take off. So we're going to just basically fly straight out.
Victor X-ray, traffic Cessna November, Sierra Papa Romeo Kilo Tango,
So for
taking off
our
runway for straight out departure.
takeoff, we're going to go ahead and line up. Once we're lined up, we're going to rotate around 85, 90 knots. And then do that. We're going to get our gear up, do our initial climb of just 100 knots for just a brief moment. And then we can go ahead and start to pitch our nose down to increase that speed. I'm going to look for, 120, 140 knots, somewhere in between there. And then I'm going to hit that pitch sync button, and then I'm going to pop on the autopilot, and that's going to have us flying our heading mode. It's going to have our pitch saved, and then we're going to go ahead and make our turn onto our flight plan. At that point, I'm going to go ahead and reduce our throttle down and get our RPM set up for our climb up to 7,000 feet. So there's we got everything sort of mapped out in our head on what we want to do. So we're just going to go ahead and come on up to full throttle here. All right, so there's 80, 85. We can go ahead and rotate. Positive rate of climb, gear coming up. So we're kind of at that 100 knots now. We can go ahead and just start to bring that nose down a little bit here. Let that airspeed increase. There's 120. We can go ahead and now hit the pitch and then autopilot on. So I've let go of the controls. Now you can see there was no nose dip. There was no problem there. It saved our pitch. It's a little steep, so we want to keep an eye on that because we're going to back off the throttle here. So before I do that, I just want to go ahead and pitch that down just a smidge. And we can go ahead and back off our throttle. Climb settings are going to be 35 inches of manifold pressure and 2,500 RPMs. We also want to get our fuel flow in pounds per hour. They want around 155 is what the PAO says, and then you just leave it there for the climb. So you can see we're at 120 knots. We're climbing up. We've got our altitude saved. We are on heading mode, so we do need to make a little bit of a turn here. I am going to pitch down a little bit to get a little bit more airspeed though, because I will not be paying too much attention to that while we're getting onto the flight plan. So let's go ahead and close the flight plan, rotate back over to our main nav screen. I'll zoom out a little bit and you can see where we need to go. So we need to intercept this leg here. So we can just come on over to our heading mode and just start turning that over. Alright, so we're about to level off in about 500 feet. You're going to see that this is now going to drop and start to level us out. We're also approaching up to our flight plan. So I'm going to go ahead and just click over onto the nav mode now. It might bank us a little bit, but we'll see. I've got us pretty good for a 45-degree entry onto that, which is nice. And we're coming up to 7,000 feet. Alright, so as we level off here, you can see our airspeed is increasing, so let's go ahead and get our cruise settings in. So I like to fly at 31 inches of manifold pressure and 2,300 RPMs. Now, as far as fuel burn, the POH calls for a total fuel burn of around 186, 187. So that's going to be about 93 on each engine. So I'm just leaning out, and you can see that that worked out great for our EGT as well. We're right at 1450, and then we'll see that our airspeed is going to be, our true airspeed will be right in that sort of like 180, 182, which is also correct for the POH. So very accurate as far as settings go. And from this point out, really, we just let the aircraft do its thing. Actually, a couple things that we need to do for our cruise as well. We need to open up our, close our cowl flaps, turn on our prop sync, and now we are fully configured for our cruise and good to go. So let's go ahead and load up our approach. So if we come down and we click on procedures, and we're going to select approach, it has the ILS already selected. If the airport that you are going into doesn't have that as the first one, you can just rotate and come through and choose whichever approach you want. But we want the ILS. Now, as far as transition, we don't want to come all the way over to this JLI transition. We want to do it from Oceanside. So if we rotate and rotate down, we can pick up Oceanside, hit enter, and you can see now it's got us set to go. We can actually go ahead and activate that because that's already our waypoint that we have that we're currently heading to. So if we click activate, you'll see that all it did was just swapped really to make a direct to Oceanside. Now, Oceanside has a altitude assignment of 4,500 feet to go in between Oceanside and the next waypoint. So we need to figure out how and when we need to descend to that point. So while there is no VNAV autopilot functionality, we do have this VNAV button here, which I already pre-configured, but I'll show you what I did. Is you just come up here, you set your altitude that you want it to be at by rotating through, and then rotate down to how far out you want to be from the waypoint. So we want to be kind of like right there, because we just that leg needs to be at 4,500 feet. So it's not a huge accuracy thing where it needs to be like, hey, we need to be, you know, there before we get to it, which we'll do for another waypoint. But we want to make sure that Oceanside is selected, which it is, and then our vertical speed profile, we're doing 1,000 feet per minute. And now you can see that it's got everything set where it's saying, okay, you got to begin your descent in about 3.5 minutes. This VSR is what we would need to do currently at our current position to get to Oceanside. So we can go ahead and click that off, and we can just kind of watch that timer a little bit. If we click this button here, and we come on down, this is going to be like our nav 1, and we go ahead and it is 108.7, 108.7, and the course for that is 245. So we can go ahead and rotate on over to 245, right about there. I also like to, for redundancy, get our nav 2 set up that way. So over here we can go frequency 108.70, enter, and then we can also get our course set to 245. And all this information is on the approach plate, which you can find online on many different websites. SkyVector's one of the ones I mainly use, but I do have a Navigraph subscription as well, which gives me all the charts. So plenty of different spots to find out all this information as far as your frequencies, headings, and altitudes. So let's go check on that altitude here. 40 seconds out. So we need to first set this to 4,500. And then we need to turn off alt mode, and we can go ahead and start pitching down. We're just gonna try and get that started, and there you go, descend to target. So we're gonna pitch down to that 1,000 feet. right around there. And we're just going to keep an eye on this here, so that way it doesn't really go above 1,000 feet. We also need to slow down a little bit for our descent. So we're going to come down to 24 inches on manifold pressure and 2,200 on the RPMs. So like I said, our next altitude is going to be 2,300. So if we go 2,300, we just have that set, and then we come back over to our VNAV, and now we can come here and we're going to say okay, 2,300. And then I want to be there a little bit before, because this is capturing the glide slope and we want to be underneath it. So if we're, instead of thinking about the altitude being underneath it, we just need to be further out in order to be underneath it as we come up to it. So let's go ahead and set that to be about a mile out, and that waypoint is going to be Sidru, which is there, so we can say that. And you can see now we've got our descent setting. So very, very useful. So everything is looking good. We should capture the glide path here. I'm going to go ahead and do first notch of, there we go. Dropping down. First notch of flaps in. Gears coming down. Checking for 3 green. 3 green. Go ahead and bring down second notch of flaps. Everything's looking good. I'm going to start to slow us down a little bit more by introducing that last notch of flaps, which you can do right around 3 nautical miles out. And once you're assured of the runway, we also want to turn off our yaw dampener. Speed is looking good. We're a little high according to the poppy lights and still a little bit off to the left, so really I'm going to probably disengage the autopilot here in just a moment and fly the rest in. Yep, so we'll come on down here and pop off the autopilot. Just make that little correction there and get us lined up. Slowly bringing back that throttle as we're coming in. Alright, gonna come to idle, get a little bit of a flare in. A little bit off center line. There we go, we can start bringing our flaps up. We'll go down to the next one, next taxiway here. I haven't applied brakes yet. I'm just letting this kind of slow down naturally. There we are, clear of the runway, so we can come on down here. We're going to pop off our landing lights and get our taxi lights on. Sorry, landing lights off, taxi lights on, and we can turn off our recognition lights as well. Cowl flaps can stay open. Transponder needs to come to off. Well, actually, really, we want it in standby, but for some reason, well, now it seems to be working. That's weird. Same again, it was probably user error before. But we're just going to quickly taxi over to this little lot here and go down through a shutdown procedure. There we go. Shutdown procedures for this is we're going to go ahead and pop on our parking brake. Then we can turn off our fuel pumps. And then go ahead and get the mixture. From there we can turn off all lights and avionics, get that all shut down, and then go ahead and you can just grab this bar and turn off all the power, and then turn off your magnetos. And if you want to, you can go ahead and put your control lock on, and we are good to go. So, you know, that's a kind of a complete flight using the 414 with the GNS530, obviously with that mod on there, but a lot of fun. I love the features that have been added into that. So I hope you enjoyed. Please check all the links down below for the checklist, and also to download the mod itself. Until next time, this is Sprocket Simulation saying have a happy flight and silky smooth landings. Take care.